I thought the Bechdel test was like there's women in the piece of entertainment and they talk, but the test is whether or not they talk about a man.
Yeah, those are the 3 requirements for a movie to pass the Bechdel test.
What?
They also have to have names. They have to be named characters who talk to each other about something other than a man.
So they would be like, oh, how about that weather?
Yeah, that counts. It's surprisingly rare. It's not supposed to be a test of like, is this movie feminist, as much as like when you start applying this test to a lot of movies, you realize how small women's voices are in the landscape of cinema. Not so much a piece by piece.
I'm looking at a chart on Wikipedia, and it says that female characters in movies between 1950 and 2006 is less than 33%.
Yeah.
It's also a good sign that your movie's probably just bad. Because it's like, oh, why are these characters here?
Yeah.
I think there's like a cool, maybe cool is the wrong way to put it. Maybe the cool's the right way to put it. I don't know. I'm being too cautious about my words. I feel like there's almost a renaissance of like strong the female the writing in television right now, especially with Phoebe Waller-Bridge both making 2 different shows and starring in one, and then Tuca and Birdie from Netflix was like an all-female staff.
Yeah, I think TV's been a very helpful door lately for all kinds of different voices that would normally struggle to get into film.
Big Little Lies is like a show that I believe has a lot of women writers on staff too.
Yeah.
So I mean, I appreciate it. It was really interesting watching Tuca and Birdie, just because I watched it because I love the art director and creator so much because of her work on BoJack, and it was the first time that I ever watched, I think, any media. That notification is going to be permanently baked in forever. I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
It was the first time I ever watched any piece of media at Coral where I was like, I don't think this is necessarily made for me.
Yeah.
And then like just having the realization that I've never thought that thought before out of the thousands and thousands of things that I watched was crazy.
Yeah.
And really made me take a step back and realized that men are pieces of shit.
It's the takeaway.
Took a show about a toucan.
I thought what was the name of the test? Fuck.
Bechdel.
I thought that was just the test for when Odell Beckham Jr. is in the movie.
I thought it was Bechdel. It's Bechdel?
It's Alison Bechdel is a comics writer.
Oh.
And she had 2 of her characters invented the test.
So you can't have like just Beck in the movie singing and be like, oh, we passed the Beck.
So it
test.
started in like a fictitious work. The Bechdel test was like a joke.
Yeah, I don't think it had a name when it was just 2 women talking about movies and like
that's
how
cool.
rare is it for movies to accomplish these 3 things, and it kind of took off and it got named after that.
That's pretty cool. That's really neat. I like that.
You should look at the Wikipedia article. It's actually very interesting. I'm going to stop reading it now because I'm not paying attention to what you guys are talking about. But the Wikipedia article is very enlightening. It isn't the first time that I've heard about that. So it's cool.
She also wrote Fun Home, which is an excellent graphic novel that was also turned into a musical on Broadway, I think.
It was just a musical. I feel like it was like a movie script too for a little while.
Oh, I don't know about that.
That was required reading in one of my college lit classes.
9-2?
What?
My queer lit class.
Mine was just a normal lit class.
Oh. Yeah, we don't read queer things in Georgia unless it's explicitly in the name. Yeah.
Well, why are we here? What's going on?
Why are we here?
Yeah.
I thought we were
in the
just
grand scheme of things.
I thought we were just here to hang out. It's been a minute since we've all just got to sit down and say hi to each
Oh man,
other.
for a quick second, that looked like there was a Confederate flag in my picture-in-picture.
Cut that out.
Like, look at see it? The mic arm crossed with the red tablecloth. I was like, oh my god, what is that? Where did that come from?
It looks more like a diver's safety flag.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's diver safety.
That's a
because
good
we are all scuba trained.
It's a good reference to just pull out of your butt, Coral.
I'm named Coral. I need to have some sort of ocean.
Are you scuba
literacy.
certified?
No.
You gotta be before you die.
Would that be a
It's
thing that would interest
scary.
you at all, or would you just be like, I'm never gonna do that?
It genuinely is very, very scary to me. I like snorkeling, but I don't think I would handle scuba diving
It'd be very
Well,
scary.
I
Yeah.
can't handle snorkeling well. When like breathing through the tube, like my body doesn't it wants to reject it. But I
Yeah.
have used a regulator, not for like a deep snorkel, but just or not for like a deep dive, but just for like going under in like a pool.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this makes a little bit more sense. But the first couple times you do it, it's really freaky.
Yeah.
I feel like I could do scuba diving, but then I saw like a picture of someone doing like cave diving combined with scuba diving,
Yeah.
and I just absolutely I was like, no.
If
I-
you if you scuba enough, like you're gonna meet sharks. That's just a normal thing that happens. And I'm
Is that
live in the
afraid
water.
of that.
Is that where you would panic?
I don't think so.
I
think,
panic on the like you're underwater so far.
Yeah, and like people who do night dives, that's crazy to me. My parents used to do night dives.
What?
And that like I can't imagine ever doing that.
Oh, your parents are rad.
They were, I think.
They're like, I guess it's time to have a daughter and lay low now.
Yeah.
But why are we here, Nick?
We're here because it is another episode of Joey Hates Film.
What? You got the name wrong.
Sorry,
Nick, you got the name
it's
wrong.
Joey Hates Movies.
It's all about the branding. It's 2019.
yeah, we
And
got
the most important thing
we'll
you
say
can
it two
do.
more times. Joey hates movies. Joey hates movies.
Yeah, don't say it 3 times or else.
Okay.
You
Beetlejuice
summon Joey.
appears?
And
Yeah, we saw Joey. and he's-
very confusing.
Ooh, we should
Man.
watch Beetlejuice.
Please no.
That's a good.
It's
that's
a good. If
that's
you're
a
gonna,
good movie.
I think if you're gonna watch one Tim Burton, you should watch Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Oh, or like, is that a Jim Carrey movie?
No.
Oh, never.
Michael
mind. I'm
Keaton.
thinking of The Mask.
No.
Well, what's our movie for today?
I picked Fargo,
Ooh,
1996 film Fargo.
Joey, you love Fargo.
I love Fargo, the television series. Something that when it came out, I'm like, oh, this is based off a movie. I've never seen the movie. I wonder if I should watch the movie. And then proceeded to not watch it through any of the 3 seasons of television that I watched. In the back of my head, I'm like, oh, maybe there's like, world connections or something going on. I should like connect these pieces of media in my media literacy brain. And I never did until yesterday.
Oh. And I had never seen the TV show until like a year ago.
Did I pressure you into doing that?
No, because I had started watching the series on a plane, on a plane to Japan, and I got like 7 episodes in before my plane landed, and I just never finished it.
Wait, what?
That feels like a very oppressive way to watch that
Yeah,
show.
I was like, oh, this is all I got. All right, this is what I'm doing. And then I watched it like 2 years later in its entirety.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
so you watched the first 7 episodes twice.
Yeah.
Regardless, we're not talking about the FX television.
I feel like we will, though, eventually. Like, it'll come up.
I feel like I'll have to because there definitely is some framing in my mind that comes from watching them backwards. Because I would assume that most people watched the movie before consuming the show
It was a very popular movie.
because it was a very popular. It was like nominated for like best screenplay,
I
right?
think it won Best Screenplay and got
I-
nominated for some other things.
I
Was
believe
this-
it was nominated for best screenplay.
Okay.
We have computers in front of us. We have notes. We could just read them. But if I'm going to sound uncertain about myself, I think it won best original screenplay. It was nominated for best editing, and it was nominated for best lead actress.
Sounds about right.
Uh,
Was this their like breakout movie, the Coen Brothers? Or did they?
That's a Nick question.
I think so.
No, they had Miller's Crossing and Barton
But-
Fink first, but this
but were
this was
those,
definitely
like-
the biggest.
I don't know that those were as critically acclaimed. Like Barton Fink is like very much a movie about movies and stuff like that, and then Miller's Cross
Right.
is just boring. I don't care about mob people.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I know our flow is generally you're the one with all the fun facts, Coral,
Mm-hmm.
but I did learn that the Coen brothers use a pseudonym for editing,
Oh.
which they got nominated for Fargo.
Oh.
So a person who doesn't exist got nominated for best editing for Fargo, and the Coen brothers didn't know what to do if they were going to win.
Oh.
So Fargo won Best Original Screenplay. It won Best Actress. That's Frances McDormand, wife of one of the Coen brothers. I forget which one. And it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, Best Director, Best Cinematography, and Best Film Editing.
So this is something that like a lot of people have seen, especially a lot of people who are like our age or a little bit older than us. I remember my parents talking about really liking watching Fargo, or at least my dad. Especially when the TV series was coming on, they're like, "Oh, son, you should watch the movie." I remember back when you were just a little boy pooping in your pants, and we went to the movie theater with your mom, and we watched Fargo. It was a good movie. good movie, son. My dad doesn't talk like that.
Coral, what was your experience with Fargo?
I had seen it when I was probably like in middle school,
Oh,
just
wow.
one time. And I remember liking it, but I certainly was like fuzzy on most of the plot and felt a little bored by it the first time I saw it
Yeah.
because I was a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed getting to go back, especially now that I have context for like Coen Brothers movies, whereas at the time I'm sure I didn't.
Did you watch the TV shows?
I did. I like them. I don't think I like them as much as a lot of other people seemed to, but I enjoy the conversation, especially between the film and the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
So
Agreed.
Fun thing to dive into. I didn't know much about the movie aside from the buried briefcase
So you knew
and
that
the wood,
about
and the wood chipper. I knew about the buried briefcase because of the continuity, kind of similar world. It is. I mean, I guess it is the same world as season 1.
Yeah,
of Fargo, the TV show.
This is a prequel to this TV series in theory, right?
In theory, yeah, that's the way that it works. Even though the timeline for all those shows are kind of a little bit wonky.
Yeah.
There is like direct connection with the buried briefcase of money from the movie in season 1, and then I knew about the wood chipper just from pop culture.
Interesting.
But aside from that, I didn't know what the wood chipper looked like.
Fargo was always one of those movies for me before I had seen it. It was like the one that like film people talk about a lot, where it's like, yo, this is like a good example of screenwriting. This is what a movie kind of like. If you need to make a movie, like this is a good example of what a movie can and should be. Blah blah blah. It was very critically acclaimed in that respect.
Can you explain to me why that is? Because I don't think I understand. And I'm not trying to like be facetious or shitty. Like, can you explain to me why that would be the case?
I mean, without going too much and spoiling some of our discussion, I think it's just the way it frames good and evil as not this big, grandiose thing. It is very much like, oh, these are kind of like realistic to some extent. Like, you know people who are like this, and you know people who have relationships like this. And it's, I think, truer to life than most movies about good versus evil and everything that lies in between. But in addition to that, it's like a nice of like, it's a good example of character too. I think Frances McDormand, especially, you know, it's super against, especially in the late 90s, it's fighting against the type of like, oh, she's a cop, but she's like a woman cop, which is like, oh, this is interesting. And she's pregnant. Well, clearly she can't do that much. And her introduction is very much like no, she's just good at her job. She just also happens to be pregnant. Like it subverts a lot of expectations as far as what people expected at the time from characters.
I think that's one thing that I always have to take a step back and remember is like what the expectations would be in like the time frame of the initial release, because we have, for better or for worse, progressed to a point where some.
I mean, now we're presented with more complicated characters on a regular basis, which is great.
It's like an arms race of writing.
Yeah. But she definitely paved the way for, like, her character paved the way for, you know, male and female cops
characters
from here on out. And, like, I think her character introduction is one of my favorite things in this movie. It's so cool.
Never really thought about that. But, Coral, what is Fargo about?
do we want to just get into a plot summary real quick?
Yeah,
for
I do.
A refresher?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Jerry is a Midwestern car salesman, and he's struggling with some serious but undefined financial troubles, probably some shady business deals you get the vibe of. He is left with limited options, so he hires two criminals, Carl and, I think, Gear?
Yeah.
Gaear. So I'm going to go with Gare, to kidnap his wife in a scheme to extract ransom money from his wealthy father-in-law. The plan is simple and no real violence is intended, but the world is a messy place and the situation tilts out of control. Soon the kidnappers have killed a cop and then two witnesses. Marge is a pregnant sheriff in the town of those murders. She traces the crimes back to Jerry's car dealership, but finds him mostly unsuspicious upon their first meeting. That night, in a kind of last-minute change of plans, Jerry's father-in-law insists on making the ransom drop himself instead of letting Jerry do it. The exchange goes poorly. It escalates into this sloppy, weird shootout. Jerry's father-in-law is killed, and then Carl, the kidnapper, is maimed but alive. He buries the cash and returns to his partner, who then kills him with an axe over a dispute on how to split the money. Marge's investigation continues. It leads her back to Jerry's dealership. She presses him more aggressively. She's definitely suspicious of him this time, which triggers him to flee the lot. She's still able to trace the kidnappers to their cabin, where she sees Gare feeding Carl's body into a wood chipper. He tries to run. She shoots him. The police eventually arrest Jerry at a nearby motel, and that's the gist of it.
And all for what? Just a little bit of money. So Fargo. So I mean, I think the thing that stands out for me, like immediately, as someone who is now more familiar with the Coen brothers like filmography, is just the opening title card. Like, this movie is based on real events, and the names have been changed to preserve the identities of those affected. Blah blah blah. Like that's all fake.
And that's the first thing to talk about, really, because it's right at the top of the movie too. You're just presented with that screen of this is a true story.
But it frames it in reality, which I think the movie is like, you can't, I honestly can believe the events of this movie because of how well it portrays just kind of idiots with power to some extent. But like, that's the thing about the Coen brothers. They are very just firmly tongue-in-cheek. They don't really care a lot of times, it feels like. It's just very just like, oh, it'd be funny if we did this. And they just do it, and it's just cool.
My understanding is that that's kind of like a commentary on culture at the time too, because true stories were very popular. I think that's accurate.
That sounds appropriate.
I'm gonna pretend like that's accurate. I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
That sounds fair.
And I, the entire Fargo TV series also started, with that same slate, which is kind of a way that the two universes are connected. And at the beginning of watching Fargo on TV, when I did, I'm like, okay, this is a true story, sure. And it took me maybe like 3 episodes, maybe 4, if I'm being honest, to be like, hold on, wait a second.
Yeah, the TV show's a little more.
That one is a little harder to believe, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a little harder to believe, but I would love some kind of like, some weird census study of how many people walked away from the movie theater taking that opening message to heart.
Yeah, and I think it's because it is just firmly grounded in reality. Like, the movie takes place in Fargo, North Dakota. Like, no one knows where that is, but it also is just like, that probably could have happened in a
they
place.
called it Fargo, because really they weren't in Fargo.
No, they're not. They're it's like one scene, right?
I think that the bar meeting at the beginning's in Fargo, but everything else is not.
Just the opening. And that's it's just, why call it Fargo? I think that's one of the only problems.
What was the name? What was the name of the town that they were actually in? Bernard.
Bernard.
Damn it! I was not close.
I feel like Fargo is just a better word.
Yeah, it is.
You want to go see Fargo. You don't want to go see Bernard.
I wish that I could live in a world where I was working at a movie theater when Fargo came out, just so I can hear people walk out of the theater trying to do Midwestern accents.
I feel like that's definitely the easiest accent to try and like affect your voice with.
Oh, don't you know?
Yeah, and it's very cute. Like it's just this movie's weird because of that, combined with a couple other things. Where, like, if we're talking Coen brothers in retrospect, looking at all their filmography, this movie is like the unsexy version of No Country for Old Men. Where it's just like No Country for Old Men is like super cinematic, it's stylized, there's so much tension in it. And it's not that there's no tension in Fargo, but it's so mundane with how it presents all of its scenes, all of its information. There's still some tension, but it's almost comical to some extent when burglars come in to like actually kidnap what's his face's wife. It feels so silly, like almost slapsticky, but it's still horrifying. And I think that's what's so that, like, on one end, this movie is about, again, more than most movies, like true evil, like evil in its purest form, but it's just presented so lifelike, and because it's so lifelike, it's so mundane and just silly a lot of times, and that's why I really like this movie.
There were times where I felt like I was laughing at inappropriate things.
Yeah.
Which I think is the intent.
And the Coen brothers are good at doing stuff like that.
I think it's interesting that comparing it to New Country for Old Men, because I believe I have seen that movie, and it feels almost opposite, because that movie's really hot, right? And Fargo's really cold.
Yeah.
And like people are annoyed for different reasons, but there's still like that whole tension of...
It's still like small town living. And
people who are bad get punished, and people who are good do good.
But no, sometimes good people get punished too.
Maybe I should brush up on more Coen Brothers stuff.
Yeah, they're like from the get go they are nihilists. Like they're just like, nothing really matters, dude. Like they're the nihilists from The Big Lebowski. Like that's them. That's just they think it's funny, and I don't know that they inherently have anything meaningful to say about nihilism, but they're just like, yeah, man, nothing really matters. Sometimes things don't work out for good people.
Yeah, I would say, especially in this movie, it's less about like the bad guys got what they deserve because that's how the world works, and more of like greed is destructive.
Yeah.
And if that is what the driving force of your life is, and if that is what every personal relationship you have is based on, those things are going to fall apart as soon as they're put to a test.
Exactly.
But it's not like moralizing as much.
And what's William H. Macy's character's name?
Jerry.
Jerry.
And one of the first things I wrote down, that's really helpful, Coral. Coral has like a little document in front of us that has the names of all the writers and directors and who the characters are in world and out. My experience with William H. Macy is, aside from the fact that his daughter cheated to get into school, that and he somehow is off the hook for it. Whatever, that's a different discussion. Is shameless, and I can and really like looking at William H. Macy only under that guise where he's just like this bad broken character is interesting because. There's a lot of ways where those two characters, what he's playing in Fargo and what he's doing in Shameless, is similar, and it makes me wonder if the casting director for Shameless was like, oh, I thought that guy was really like dumb but kind of smart but kind of dumb but kind of awkward but kind of like take chargey in Fargo, and they mutated that character. But it was weird just looking at Frank Gallagher being like, oh hey, you're younger and you are in a very different situation.
He's aged pretty well. Like he looks kind of mostly the same.
He has. He's like what, at least 20 years older now.
Yeah.
And he does look pretty similar. He's just a little bit aged.
Cole, what were your first thoughts of meeting Jerry? What was your first impression of Jerry?
I was kind of surprised at how, well, this isn't a first impression, but you feel his anxiety so physically that even though it is his fault that he's in this situation and that he's doing bad things and he is literally leveraging his wife to try and get out of these horrible situations, you still like more immediately than any of that, I felt his anxiety when he's on the phone with his boss about the serial numbers on the car. Like you just feel that, and it's not so much that you understand what he's doing or why he's doing it or you agree, but it's just
you feel what he feels.
That type of anxiety of like you're in over your head. You literally can't fix the situation you're in. There's nothing you can do to fix it. Is such a just present feeling.
I completely agree with you, and one thing that's weird to me that now that I'm looking back at it is, I don't think that there's anything like filmic that heightens that tension to any extent. I don't think that the Coen brothers really do anything creatively with the way they cut these particular scenes or anything, or maybe it is and I'm just like oblivious to it because I'm not inherently an editor by trade. But I think it's all William H. Macy. Like I think it's him. Like he's just good. I think it's that combined with the accent and his stammering, and it's like this weird mix of like this wholesome accent with like this master plan slowly kind of unraveling, and his just delivery that combines into this weird like clashing mess that makes you feel like him.
Yeah, I like how you can really feel just how awkward and uncomfortable he is because it comes through and like his acting plays really well that way. And it's also fun you talk about like, that wholesome accent or that wholesome part of town. It's like they're playing that idea of this. I always say Midwestern, but is that correct?
I mean,
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I'm always like self-conscious that I'm always misrepresenting what the Midwest is. But I think that's like the Chicago-ish area. Like that kind of hospitality versus the craziness that's actually going on. Because all of these characters feel kind of like normal people.
Yeah.
To me, they kind of feel like dumb normal people. Like
I don't think they're dumb.
It seems like they're I guess normally what I'm getting at is that you have a lot of character archetypes that feel like they know it all or they always have the right answer.
Mm.
And it's interesting to see characters in this movie just constantly make mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thinking about though, I feel like a lot of these characters this is the time it didn't work for them. You know, this isn't like someone who's been fucking up this way their entire life, and this is just like the one that finally took them down. As much as it is like those criminals, I feel like they've done shit like this a million times before, and it's been for the most part fine. And this is the time it just all completely spun out.
And that's the stuff that movies are made of. Like a lot of times people say like, "Oh, of course this happens because, you know, that's what needs to happen for the movie." And it's like, well, like movies, obviously you want to capture the most interesting aspects of these characters' lives. So I think more so than any other film, this one does a good job of like, I believe that this is the time that they messed up.
Yeah.
But
They
going
messed
back
up a lot.
going back to their accent though, I think that it does a good job of undercutting a lot of the like sinister intent that's going on in a lot of this movie. And like you said, it often makes you feel like they are dumb, but they're not. They are very capable. Well, a lot of them are very capable human beings, but
I
they are
think they're on a
just
spectrum. I like William H. Macy at the very end of the movie when he's like in his hotel room. He like forgets his cover name. So I'm like, okay, dude, you really are not a great criminal.
But my first impression of Macy, why I like Jerry so much and that I despise him, is that I think he's the perfect example of what like that old school Christianity. Like this is evil in its purest form because it's not like Adolf Hitler evil where it's like this over the top, grandiose, like, oh, I'm gonna kill babies kind of thing. It is very much like a subtle, like everyone is kind of capable of this kind of evil to some extent, and he just lets it get out of hand. It's the idea like, you know, it's a pathetic, you understand why he's doing it, but the fact that he's even doing it is so pathetic and like off-putting, and it's just like, oh, I hate you. But at the same time, it's like, oh, I understand. You are trodden on. He's definitely like, he would have been like a 4chan shit poster had this movie been in like 2019.
Dude, his son was totally on 4chan. That kid was kind of a fuck.
Well, that kid was like more, I think, put together than him. Like the kid could at least stand up for himself, and I don't think William H. Macy's character is capable of that. I don't think Jerry can do that.
That poor kid was the real victim.
That kid had a white snake poster. He's not a
He also played accordion. I like that. I also noticed that he had a white snake poster, but I think you only ever see like ESNAK at the bottom. Like, I don't, do you ever see the full poster?
Well, Coral knows White Snake.
I recognize that logo.
Here I go again on my own.
But after we meet Jerry, we quickly are met with a new character, our protagonist, Marge, played by Frances McDormand. And Marge is cool.
Is there a term for like doing storytelling like this where they kind of swap who you think the protagonist is going to be?
I'm not sure. No, I'm sure there is, but off the top of my head, I don't know. But you thought
Because
William
I like that idea where I'm like, okay, here's our protagonist. 10 minutes later, okay, I was wrong. Here's our protagonist.
Well, in the Fargo TV series, for the most part, like Jerry is the protagonist, right?
Yeah, his name's not Jerry, but yes.
It's not so much
the Jerry-esque character is the protagonist.
It's not the sheriff, whereas in this movie, it really is Marge's story.
Yeah, it's Marge's story of trying to solve this case, and less of Jerry. They're almost two leads, I'd say. Like I feel like it gets really close, but Marge is just slightly ahead.
And I think that like on purpose, you see the personal lives of both these characters. So you see Jerry, his relationship with his wife. She's very much like I'm not sure if it's this movie or the series. I might be getting them mixed up. Where she's like, "Oh, I should have married this man," but you can imagine his wife saying that in front of him to his face in front of the kid. Like that's the kind of relationship they have. And he's willing to try and get her kidnapped for ransom money. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have Marge and her husband, Ed, who, you know, Marge is pregnant. They've been married. You can tell they've been married for a long time. I don't think they explicitly say, but you can kind of feel it from the vibes they give off.
The way they watch TV together, that is a couple that's been together for a long time.
Exactly. And that's the kind of thing is you can tell based on like it's like this homeliness that they have when they're around each other that's so nice. You know, he wakes up before her even though he doesn't have to. He cooks her breakfast. He watches her eat breakfast.
He brings her Arby's at work for lunch.
He visits her on her lunch break. He's an artist, so he kind of mostly stays at home. And she is, you know, she's the breadwinner in the family, and he kind of...
I'm sure he got a lot for that 3-cent stamp, Nick.
It's so mundane. He won a stamp contest.
The whole movie is so mundane.
He got second place in a stamp contest.
Yeah, how dare you? He did not win.
But going back to Marge real quick, like we're met with her when she's investigating what happened when this kidnapping kind of went awry. A cop was killed in this foiled kidnapping, and she's investigating everything that happened. And immediately we see, oh, Marge is pregnant. Okay, that's interesting. We have a cop who's pregnant.
I don't think we see that. I think she tells us. Because I definitely didn't know until she's like, oh, I have morning sickness.
No.
Because she did.
I feel like you can tell in this movie.
Yeah. If only like her shirt wouldn't be that loose.
Okay.
If she weren't
pregnant. But I think it's
both. Not very obvious. You don't see like a crazy belly bump. You have to be paying attention.
I guess.
And I think we're kind of disarmed by Marge because, one, you don't normally see pregnant cops. That's always like an interesting thing to see. And then two, it's the accent again. It undercuts, I think, every character, no matter how capable they are. You think like, oh, that's like my friend's mom that I grew up in high school with or whatever. But then immediately, as soon as she is like kind of forced to, not even forced, she's leading the investigation, she's like, oh, you know, you could see the victim fall out of the car right here. You can see based on this. So it's like immediately we're met with, no, she's capable at her job. She's good at her job. She's better than the guy.
Her partner.
What does he do? Doesn't he like cry or something? He gets upset about something.
Not really. I think that he's just portrayed as like not being intelligent.
Yeah, he's dumb. That's what it is. Now I'm getting confused with Twin Peaks. Oh my gosh. But yeah, he's kind of dumb. I think for the most part. And Marge is leading the investigation, and her hunches are right. She is correct about how everything unfolded, and it's just like cool. Marge is good at her job. Rad. Also, I really just like the relationship between her and Ed. It's so cute.
Yeah. Well, they're the only people in this movie who treat each other from like a genuine affection and genuinely caring about that relationship. And I think her pregnancy also pays into that, where she's participating in like the most basic form of like caring for another person and having that mutual relationship that is predicated only on love and not like opportunity or profit. And like him getting up to cook her eggs is the first nice thing someone does altruistically in the whole movie.
Yeah. And one thing that I'm just thinking about now in regards to Marge is I think a lot of times whenever there's a pregnant woman in a movie that's like a thriller, a suspense, you're always kind of worried about her pregnancy to some extent. Like that's a danger. Like, oh, something might happen to her or the baby. But in this movie, I never really felt that.
I don't think I ever thought that.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, no, she just happens to be pregnant. Like it's another one of those Coen brothers like subversion. It's like, no, she's just. We thought it'd be funny if she was pregnant. Like, okay, yeah, sure, let's do it. But previously you mentioned the relationship between Jerry and his father-in-law. Well, what kind of relationship would you guys describe that as?
I think his father-in-law also thinks that Jerry's as dumb as I think Jerry is.
I feel like the father-in-law definitely would have called Jerry a cuck.
I'm a big Mr. Monopoly money man, and you don't provide for my daughter. She is so much better than you. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, the most thinly veiled mutual dislike. Barely try at that point.
I felt so bad for Jerry because he's so pathetic.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if I agree with that.
But like at the other end of it's like, no, you're a terrible human being, Jerry. But it's just I think it is going back to what you said, Cole. It's that anxiety that makes me feel bad for him. The fact that he made me feel anxiety, now I suddenly feel bad for him.
Yeah, and how present he is in their home. You know, like I didn't feel bad for Jerry when he was at his father-in-law's office asking for money. Like, that's obviously like shitty on Jerry's part exclusively, I felt like. But when it's in his home and he's eating dinner with Jerry and his wife and addressing how they choose to parent their child, like that stuff, you feel
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, like who does that? I guess a lot of people do that.
A lot of people do that. No, absolutely. A lot of people do that.
I guess I couldn't picture. I'd have trouble picture myself in that scenario.
Well, that's good.
What, that we're less shitty collectively than Jerry and
Well,
his
I don't even think
father-in-law?
that it's. I think it's just an idea like you can tell that these people have kind of grown up in environments like this their entire life. And that is just something that they probably learned from their parents, which gets handed down to them, and so on and so forth. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And whereas Marge and Ed, I don't really get that vibe from them. It is very much like a respectful, mutual relationship where it's like, I'm just going to be kind to you because I like you. Or I'm just going to be kind to you just because. Because I think that they are just genuinely kind people. But one scene that stands out to me that's like almost out of place in this movie but makes sense in retrospect is the scene where Marge's old classmate from, I think it was high school. Was it high school or
Yeah.
college? She gets a call randomly saying like, "Hey, I saw that you were in the news or whatever. Like, it's been a long time. You want to catch up?" And immediately, this is the first time. This is, I think, the closest we get to a hero's test in the movie, and it's very mundane and very silly. But like, she goes like, "Oh yeah, I'll go meet this guy or whatever." And so it's like, oh, she's gonna meet a possibly an old flame from high school or school or whatever. Like, oh, she wants to look nice. Okay, what's going on here? What? I thought you had something with Ed. What's going on? But it's just such a wholesome, again, another mundane. They don't get lunch at Sizzler this time, but they definitely get lunch at Sizzler at one point in the movie. And I just thought that was great because I love Sizzler. But the second time they go to like a hotel and they get a hotel restaurant, and that's where she meets her old buddy. Do you remember this guy's name?
It's Mike.
Mike. She meets up with Mike, and you could tell Mike is keen on Marge. Mike definitely wants to score with Marge.
Yeah, unnervingly so.
Like, it's very
he's
creepy.
clearly off balance.
And again, you see her investigative work once again because she's getting those vibes too. She's like, "Oh, I immediately regret going out to this meal because this dude's clearly like
Creepy.
he's creepy and he wants to get with me."
Yeah.
And she's like, not interested at all. You can tell right away, not interested.
Please don't sit next to me.
But because she's just curious by nature and she's good at investigating, she kind of figures out like, oh yeah, this dude just had a hard life, and this is why this is all happening. His wife died of cancer, I think it was, and so this is just his way of coping. And even though she's kind of repulsed by him, she's still kind to him. Which, again, is just going back to the kind of character she is. She's just good.
When I first saw this scene, before I thought about it, I was already on the path that I was feeling like this movie might have like unnecessary scenes or moments, and maybe that stems from some of it feeling so like everyday, and like a more a day in the life than like, oh man, this is an investigative crime drama. I'm like, oh, do we really need to like see this scene or that scene, or like why are they important? And I was like struggling to derive like intent from them, and I felt this way really seriously for the dinner meetup. I'm like, why is there this B plot? Why is there this C plot going on right now? And it took me until, after the movie, thinking about it in the shower, where I realized that it was actually very important for her to meet up with this guy and then get a call from her other friend and then learn that he was lying to her about his dead wife. Because that was the moment, I think, where she started to, question people's word, which seems interesting from like someone who is a cop. You would assume that they would have a lot of experience just being naturally untrustworthy of people. But it took her, being explained by her friend that like, oh no, he lied to you, honey, for her to go back and look at William H. Macy again and be like, hey, maybe you lied to me too.
Yeah, I think Marge is someone who is just inherently believes in the good in people. Maybe. What do you think, Cole?
Yeah. This scene's like a much debated scene going from like its first release. It's like a hotly contested scene.
Oh,
as far as-
really?
Why-
yes,
why is
as far
that?
as why that's there are people on the side of like it's a movie about the strange ways lives intersect. So you needed a scene like this that didn't serve a purpose. There's a lot about that triggered her to be suspicious, and there's a lot about it's just like her only not failure, but you see her. She's excited about this meeting, and she does her hair and makeup and puts on a nice dress and is like double checking how she looks and everything. And it's that she needs to have some temptation that she overcomes, or some weak spot in her marriage or sense of a person. But it's a conversation that's been happening for like 20 years about like what is this scene about really.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I didn't do much independent research after watching it. But I would have never thought that people would talk about that so much, because it does seem. I feel like if you're not watching it with critical intent, it could seem very pointless, which is, I guess, why people are talking about it.
And I think every other interaction so clearly, like if you want to watch it through this filter of like, you're either interacting with someone in a positive way because you care about them and you care about people, or your interaction with them is predicated on what you can get from them monetarily or in some sense like that. And this conversation is one that just doesn't fit neatly into either of those categories. He does have a genuine affection for her, and he does care about her and like her, and he doesn't want something from her, but he is also essentially, treating her poorly. So that's a more complicated interaction than most of what you see in the movie, I think.
And I think like going back to what you said, Joey, about like watching the movie with critical intent, like you are trying to unpack stuff actively as opposed to just average moviegoer just wants to like, hey, I came here because I heard this movie was good, I'm going to check it out, and they don't really go in with the critical eye or shined and ready to go. I do think that a scene like this is just another. I always like to think of movies as like an essay where like they open with a thesis, and by the end of the movie they will have either like confirmed that thesis or like negated it and confirmed either this thing is true or it is not. They're trying to convey some sort of universal truth, and everything that is in between from beginning to end is a supporting sentence in their overall essay.
All movies are science.
I mean, I think that there's something to it where if something doesn't belong, you cut it out for a reason. And I think that everything that it is in a movie should support what you are trying to say with that movie. And even though you might not understand what it is actively in the current scene being expressed, by the end of it, it kind of coalesces into this amorphous blob of feeling where you're like, I kind of understand why this character behaved this way because I have a better understanding of just seeing them.
To that point, I mean, I guess that would make Fargo a really interesting use case for that scenario, because I definitely did have moments. I feel like normally when I watch a movie now, I guess I am watching them, for the purpose of this podcast a little bit more critically than if I was just, casually on the couch. But most things I feel like I don't notice if something is necessary or unnecessary like the first time through. But I definitely had that thought with Fargo, which felt unique, of me being like, does this need to be here?
Yeah.
I felt that there were a couple things that took me out of Fargo from a production standpoint. And I don't know if it's just I feel like after watching it, it seems like a somewhat low budget film. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm gonna go with it is. Just because comparing like some of the like the gun effects and the blood effects and the fighting and whipping each other with belts, and it seemed weird, and even some of the hard editing seemed a little bit jarring. They do a lot of full complete dips to black.
Yeah, I always thought that was kind of weird. I don't really know why. Maybe it's like a way of chilling out. I don't know.
I don't know what kind of a purpose it would serve, but I definitely spent more time thinking about the editing or the effects because it seemed like it was in the forefront. It was really easy to notice. Like when like the cop having the comical amount of blood squirt out of his head, that almost seems slapstick in the way that practical effect was just like jarring and funny and interesting to me all at the same time.
Yeah, it's strange because I think the level of violence, if it was really realistic and it felt like you responded to it viscerally because it was so well done, I feel like that would not fit this movie at all, though. So I don't know what the middle option is between like a little corny and cheesy and like why is this movie suddenly feel very violent and body horror-y, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and I feel like for the series they leaned more into body horror and violent than
Yeah.
Fuck. There's a word I'm thinking of. Would this be an appropriate time to say campy?
The movies campy?
Or some of the violence or effects.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think so for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And whereas I think that there is some sort of the series is very true to life with how it portrays violence. I remember when our Jerry stand-in in the series kills his wife, he kills her, he hits her on the head, and it's not like overly gory, but the impact of it, the camera doesn't cut away. It's just like, I remember like, oh my God, like it shocked me.
Yeah.
And I think if that had happened in this movie, it would have like almost tainted it somehow in my eyes. Like it would have been like, ugh, what is this movie? Like
It would have felt like it was trying to be edgy
yeah.
in a way, and that like reframes all of the pleasantry in this movie if it feels edgy ever.
Yeah, like going to that money exchange in the parking lot with Jerry's father-in-law and Steve Buscemi's character. Like it is downright just silly how it all unfolds. It's very like anticlimactic. It's very unsexy in the way you think of like a Hollywood shootout. It is just like two dudes shooting at each other from point blank. One falls down, one dude gets shot in the face, gets really mad, and then just plugs him like 8 times in the chest for no real reason. Like it's not good looking.
Yeah, it doesn't look great, but I really like your thoughts about that, Coral, because I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Just through and through. I think you're correct with your analysis, but maybe there's something about me that just wants that weird realism, and just because I'm so used to that, it's hard for me to take a step back and be like, hold on, mate, this kind of almost serves a purpose to not be hyper realistic. Also, Martin Freeman's character in season 1, his name was Lester Nygaard.
Lester
Just
Nygaard.
for the audience and my own sanity. What I was when I finished watching it, I was trying to think what kind of a box to put Fargo in, or like what you would call it, like on the Wikipedia page. And I was like, I guess it's kind of a dark comedy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say so.
Okay.
I'd say I would even go far as to say it is noir. It is detective.
I guess it has a
noir.
lot of those tropes
Yeah, no, for sure.
or flagging markers.
And like The Big Lebowski is another movie that it is a detective noir, but it's very just framed from a silly angle because of the Coen brothers. Like they just like to play with the idea of genre a bit.
Does noir normally glamorize crimes?
I don't know that it glamorizes it. I think it's more so like noir is a style of storytelling to some extent where you have certain archetypes, you have certain expectations. Usually it's rain-soaked cities and things like that, but it doesn't need to be. But it's usually detective, murderer, crime, a
I
femme
think
fatale.
it usually requires the criminals to be a little more organized and intelligent,
Oh, yeah.
or at least lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, for sure.
Because they're not in Fargo, which really makes me wonder, since there's no glamour to the crimes in Fargo. Is this a more accurate representation of what real world crime is like? Because I don't know that answer, but to me it feels like something much more real than whatever other crime action movie you want to name. Like, it feels like it's within the realm of possibility.
I think this is probably a more accurate depiction of crimes that get solved.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's perfect, Coral. That's
Because I feel like we don't get a lot of those. You know, crimes that get solved like on NCIS or like.
It has to be like the most insane high-level detective work that no one else could even conceive of, and that's the only way someone gets caught.
CSI,
I think
DNA
usually
labs.
I think people normally get caught because they fuck up or something goes wrong.
Or just good detective work.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is definitely to some extent that like, oh, I could have solved this if I were in those shoes because like it all the evidence lines up. They play fair.
Yeah. Everything happened in a car from that dealership with dealership tags.
I also just dumb criminals, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, dumb criminals. There's a couple other things to just kind of jump around that were striking to me. I think that the sex scene in the beginning of the movie is one of the funniest sex scenes I've seen in my entire life. And I don't know if it intended to be that way, but I think that might be the only time in the movie that I actually laughed because it just seemed so absurd to me and weird that I thought it was really funny.
I had that watching a movie in public reaction because I was watching it at work on my like second computer screen. And then I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot there was a sex scene in this movie. Oh, man, this is weird now.
That's fine. People watch TV all the time there.
Yeah,
you know, for work, right?
Just,
So, I mean,
no one else can know that I've watched a movie with a sex scene in it. And God forbid, no one can watch me watch that scene.
Nick's low-key super prude, Coral.
I think having sex workers in that movie is fleshes out a lot of the themes of that movie more completely, though, because you have a lot of people who are beaten down by just the need to like chase money and people who suffer through labor and who cannot find a human connection because every interaction they have is predicated on profit. So I think the necessary flip side of that entire coin is that sex workers exist. So I'm glad they were included.
Oh, I'm glad you unpacked that because I definitely flew over my head. But yeah,
it seems like if you wanted to like write a paper on Fargo, a good topic might be how money impacts the lives of all the characters.
Yeah, I think this movie has a pretty notable anti-capitalist bent to it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why Coral thinks it's really fucking rad. Right?
Yeah.
I think my favorite scene though in the whole movie, outside of meeting Marge, is just the very last scene in the movie where her and
with
Ed,
Marge.
Yeah, Marge and Ed are laying in bed and they're watching TV, and you know, he got second place in that stamp contest and he's kind of bummed about it. She's consoling him. She's very proud of him and the work he's done, and he has no idea what she witnessed and what she solved, and she doesn't feel compelled to tell him because it's just part of her job. And it's just they're about to fall asleep, and she says, "You know what, Ed? We're doing okay." And that is what the movie's about. Like, that is just like, hey, no matter what your life is, like, it's definitely better than Jerry and what happened with his. Like, people, I think, get hung up on a lot of things in their life, rightfully so. But at the same time, you didn't try to get your wife kidnapped for ransom money because you're too much of a pathetic person to stand up for yourself and do that sort of thing. So, hey, you know what? You're doing okay.
So if we just kidnap Coral, Nick, then we take ransom.
Well, wait.
I don't know who's going to put up a lot of money for me.
Well, I mean, your parents scuba dive.
All that scuba cash.
All that scuba money.
Coral, do you like Fargo?
I do. I enjoyed it more than I expected to because I did remember it a little dull, but I think I had more to dig into as an actual adult now. What did you guys think of the wood chipper? It was so much.
It's very I think it's the closest that the movie gets gory.
Yeah. Everything else is, a gunshot. And that is a human foot.
It reminds me of like a thing that we would have done when we worked at the Attack, where we have like a super the point of this particular part of the scene is this character is disposing of evidence, and then we'd be like, well, we got a wood chipper. Like, wouldn't it be funny if we just had like a comical amount of blood spray out of one end, then you have like a foot sticking out on the other end? Yeah,
I'd like to see the science. I mean, how did they crush the whole body, but for some reason, like the femur's having problems getting in the wood chipper?
Yeah, I've always heard it's the rib cage that really.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, why is that a thing you've heard?
People have gone through wood chippers.
Oh, yeah.
Read a lot about it. I always imagine that scene differently in my head because I've heard about it multiple times before actually watching it. And I imagine like a much bigger wood chipper. So to see how tepid it was
Yeah.
was interesting. And I do wonder how much blood would actually come out of someone in a wood chipper sense like that, because they just made like a snow cone on the snow, but I feel like there'd be more.
You have the mindset that it would just pool underneath.
Oh yeah, it would be gnarly, but I really like that climactic feeling where they're like, oh hey, he doesn't see the cop coming up because of the noise of the wood chipper. He's just really trying to cram the leg in it. I feel like, all things considered, not the worst way to get rid of a body.
I mean, what about all the
As
blood?
long as no one goes near that scene for like 6 months.
And also, I think it would spray, because think of it like a grape. Like if you were to squeeze a grape from one end, it would just all burst out of the other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's.
Did they
what
both go through the wood chipper?
What?
No, I think they found her body in the house still.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so they didn't both go through
It was
the wood
just
chipper.
Steve Buscemi's body that got wood chippered.
Man, it is tragic that she just died for really no reason at all.
Yeah.
And it was that's
Absolutely no reason.
all for a little money.
I also think it's interesting, the body double they got as soon as the bag went over her head. Like the rest of the movie, that was not that actress, and it was a little obvious.
Well, yeah, they can't put an actress in a. They can't put a bag over someone's head for that long.
I was thinking practically. Imagine paying that like AAA actor, AAA rate to just not be on camera.
Nah, man. Casey Affleck was the ghost in A Ghost Story the whole movie. He doesn't say a word, and he has a sheet over his head the entire time, and it was him.
I don't know if you're making a joke.
I'm not. That was really Casey Affleck.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
It didn't
man.
have to be,
Maybe he wanted to be.
He's method, man.
dude. That's how you get in character. Do you like Fargo, Nick?
I really like Fargo. I thought also like I wouldn't like it as much because I've seen the movie like 4 times at this point, and I'm like I know what happened in this movie, but there's just like little things that you catch, and I'm like, oh, that was cool. Like I don't remember that, but that was fun, and it's just like, you're not often exposed to like a good movie, and so just to be like hit over the head with like, oh no, this is a good movie. It's like, oh wow, this is what a good movie looks like. Great.
I don't like the Paul Bunyan statue.
That's just because you don't like Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, I do like that the motel was called the Big Blue Ox Motel though, or something like that. That's some fun Paul Bunyan continuity. But yeah, the creepiest thing for me in that whole movie was just that upshot of that statue and not anything else.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Really unsettling.
What's the point of the Paul Bunyan? Is it just a funny thing?
Hear me out. 200 IQ.
You can't say 200 IQ and then
Well, I'm hoping that through the magic of editing, we'll.
No, I'm
we'll
keeping it in.
No, that's you can make me sound smarter just by cutting all this middle part out as I actively think. The dude looks at the Paul Bunyan statue and then kills his partner with an axe.
No, yeah, that might be it. He gets the idea there. But Paul Bunyan comes up a couple times throughout the movie.
Okay.
Maybe it's like the eyes in Great Gatsby, where it's like it's watching you.
It's definitely. I feel like the Paul Bunyan statue almost bookends the movie though, because it's where things go wrong, and then it's where justice is.
Oh yeah,
had.
yeah. There you go. Paul Bunyan is justice. You heard it here first.
There's more bookends in the movie too, because it starts and stops with the whole white frame, snowy film thing.
That's not a film thing.
The movie
Snow?
opens and closes like on that shot that's almost completely blown out with like cars in the snow.
Oh. Well, there you go. Joey, did you like Fargo?
I did like Fargo.
But the real question, did you like it more than the series?
No.
That's because you're just a big Billy Bob Thornton fan.
Okay, that is only half a joke. Because I think that I have just incredibly fond memories of the first season of Fargo, and I think that it was an incredibly well-made show with character arcs that I appreciated and something that we don't often see on television. I'm also a sucker for like that weird like anti-hero bad protagonist stuff that both the movie and the series does. And while I do think that it's better than the third season of Fargo, I don't think that the movie to me is better than season 1 or season 2. I think is like if you look at them as complete works, I would rather watch all 8 hours of the series than watch Fargo.
Oh,
the movie.
Hear me out. The Fargo TV series is the movie adaptation of the real life events of the Fargo movie in the world of the Fargo movie. Because it's Hollywood, it's super stylized.
Dude, you're the 200 IQ now. I like Fargo as a movie. I'm happy that I watched it. I like this series more. And I wouldn't say in a lot of these you've kind of, almost put things in ranking positions.
Yeah, what would you
And
put
I think I would put it both under fuck. God damn it.
Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Is it better than Jurassic Park?
I think that it is better than Jurassic Park. I think it's better than Green Book, and I think it's better than The Matrix.
So it's not as good as The Thing.
7 or Collateral.
So that's very interesting ranking.
By that ranking, it is exactly in the middle of the pack. And if I liked a movie in the middle of the pack, that means that we've watched more movies that I like than I don't like. So we're learning something. I think.
But you still didn't like Jurassic Park, so that's like -2.
That's still -2
on the back end.
I think I still make people salty by claiming that one. I still kind of get shit and they're like, what do you mean you don't like Jurassic Park? Yeah, bad movie. just bad.
I honestly thought you would like Fargo more than your ranking indicates.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think that out of all the movies we've watched, Fargo is the one that I watched with the highest expectations. And I wonder if not hitting those high expectations brought it down a little bit for me. Because I feel like when I watching Collateral, I had absolutely zero expectations and I really enjoyed it, which probably like makes it a better experience walking away from it. Whereas Fargo, I have high expectations and like I only just liked it. Like I don't feel like it reached the whole way, so I feel like it knocks it down a little bit.
Makes sense.
Just a little bit.
So before we wind down,
Before
we call it quits. What is our next movie?
So, is this a good time in the podcast to apologize for the long break between
Never
episodes?
apologize.
Never apologize.
Pretend it doesn't happen.
Pretend it doesn't happen.
Sweep it under the rug.
I feel like that's remarkably. I feel like that's remarkably disingenuous.
No, 'cause this podcast is going to get super popular later, and everyone is going to go back and listen to it from the beginning, and they're not going to have any idea this ever happened.
Yeah.
They're not unless they
You're
like are
dating us.
unless they
Yeah.
look at the dates.
Yeah,
Okay.
but don't do that.
Okay, I'm not
Who
going to
looks
do
at
that.
the dates on a podcast?
I'm not-
Yeah.
don't look at the dates. Don't apologize. I'm sorry that there was a long break. There were situations out of our control. It was mostly Nick's fault. I'm not going to lie.
That is not true.
You can leave that up. I mean, who's the one who wants to apologize for you? You can leave that up. We did a while back host a poll on Patreon, patreon.com/cybergarbage, where people watch the podcast. They watch our show on Twitch, twitch.tv/cybergarbage. They hang out on Discord where you can talk about both things at cybergarbage.cool. Get those plugs in. A while ago, right after Green Book, about our next movie because y'all were going to pick it. And we had quite the contentious race, so much so that we needed a runoff. And even our runoff was very close. The two choices were Ex Machina and Memento. Did I say it right that time?
You said it right.
Okay. Memento?
Just Memento.
Mementos.
Those are two very different
Coke,
movies.
Coke and Mementos.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. I'm sorry. Again, for both those things now. And picking up. Y'all by a very narrow margin chose Memento, so that is going to be the next movie that we're watching.
If you're listening to the audio version, you can't see the color drain from Coral's face. She was mad when she found out what we were watching next.
Yeah. We're building the most like freshman year bro movie list.
And I, in full disclosure, don't necessarily enjoy that. I think that we start on a path of like, let's try and find something Joey's interested in. And I think that we did kind of walk down that road. We hit some notes like with Seven and Collateral
You're just
and like
a bro,
Fargo.
dude.
A stunning amount of movies we watched have been from the late 90s.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Almost every movie has been from 95 to 2000.
Yeah, so we're gonna do Memento, and then I think we're gonna try and have a little bit of a culture shift, and really try and see as wide as we can go on the field, because I think I think that'll be good for both our sanity, and also just exploring this concept of me not liking movies.
Oh, I'm gonna have fun with this one then.
Nick, we had to talk later. But yeah, no, I just again, well, there will be a little bit of a quicker turnaround time. Your homework is Memento.
Dude, everyone loves Christopher Nolan.
Did we already watch a Christopher Nolan movie?
No.
Okay, good.
Dude, next we should watch The Dark Knight.
No.
It's in the IMDb top 100 movies of all time. It's in the top 10.
Well, at that ring, let's just watch Shawshank Redemption. I've seen Shawshank Redemption. Why the Coral?
I'm just
Can we-
so tired.
Yo, maybe you might just have the taste of a freshman college bro.
I don't want that. I try and swim so hard against that. For those who are curious and aren't using a second screen experience and want to know what the IMDb top 250 movie rankings of all time based on IMDb user ranking is, number 1 is indeed The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah. Number 2 is probably The Dark Knight.
No, it's not. It's The Godfather. Number 3 is The Dark Knight. Number 4 is The Godfather Part 2. And if you want to round out the top 5, number 5 is Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Maybe
Then-
I don't like movies either.
See, this is one of those things people are like, man, the critics don't know what they're talking about. It's all about the fans. The fans really know what's like. No, the fuck they don't. Look at that list.
Hear me out. I feel like it's just fine to run down the top 10 now. Number 6 is Pulp Fiction. Number 7 is Schindler's List. Number 8 is 12 Angry Men. Number 9 is Inception. Number 10 is Fight Club. So, for those who are counting, I've actually seen every movie in the top 10 except for 2?
Which one?
3.
Oh, The Dark Knight.
I haven't seen The Dark Knight. I haven't seen Fight Club. And I haven't seen Lord of the Rings. And we don't have to go there. Nor do I really want to.
Critics exist for a reason, everyone listening. And it's definitely not to create a terrible top 250 movie list like that.
Well, this is publicly created.
Yeah, I know. That's why maybe don't listen to the fans.
I mean, everyone loves The Shawshank Redemption. And I kind of liked Fargo. And maybe we'll like Memento. And after that, we're going to get something so far out of left field, you guys.
What if Coral loves Memento?
I've seen Memento. I can promise you I don't love Memento.
Cool. I'd classify that as spoilers.
You're spoiling our podcast.
Thank you all for being here with us. Again, patreon.com/cybergarbage and cybergarbage.cool is our Discord. I am almost exactly positive that everyone listening to this is already in Discord. But in case you're not, please come hang out with us. Spread the word. The Church of Nick. And let a friend know. Give us one of those ratings on iTunes. We just checked before the podcast. We have 8 5-star reviews.
But no one's written a review. Criticize us, but in a good way.
Give it to us on Apple iTunes. Give us that 5 stars. On Spotify.
iTunes doesn't exist anymore.
Nick,
it's Apple Podcasts
Nick,
now.
my patience, like Coral's interest in Memento, is very thin.
All right. Bye. Well, you just said our patience was done.
Okay, bye. Bye. sounded pained.